Power is like a game that people are playing.
Aggressive, powerful people in history had incredibly high levels of ambition, and they had to learn to control that on their rise to the top.
It comes from a place of weakness. You're not secure about your own masculinity. You have to assert yourself. You have to prove that you're superior to the woman.
Some of the best people who are the most successful are really good at playing a role. And I was always shocked at how they could be so smart about some things, but be absolutely ignorant about people.
You've got to be a little more open to having experiences, to even having failure, to even being hurt. Just living life and to be alive and not be so worried and fearful.
Natural, like you're just naturally who you are, then people won't realize that you're seducing them.
But I think that the source of most of the pain that people feel in their life, the source of most of their failures in life, why they hit a wall, why they can't get any further in life, is because they don't understand people.
Well, everything depends on your circumstance. The last law in the law of the 48 laws of power is assume formlessness, in which I say, please ignore all 47 of the other laws and be fluid and be in the moment. There are moments when one law is applicable and in other moments when it's not. There's court attention at all cost. At some points, court attention at all costs can be a terrible strategy. So it depends on where you are in life. So if you're starting out, you're in your early 20s, you're in your first job perhaps, right? And you have a boss, you're obviously going to have a boss. Your natural instinct, human nature, is to try really hard to impress him or her with how great you are, how good you look, how energetic you are. And you're not being aware of the fact that you might be inadvertently triggering their insecurities. You're younger than them. You're probably better looking than they are. You have the energy of youth, the kind of fluidity. And if you try too hard, they may think people might like this person more than they like the boss. You're triggering their insecurities. And when you do that, it's very, very dangerous. So I would say pretty much in every circumstance, when you're starting out your first few jobs, you want to be very careful. You want to be aware of the fact, this is something that you don't often think about, even older people don't think about. Everybody has an ego. You think that powerful person that you're working for, my God, they got there, they've got all this money, they worked hard. They don't have an ego. They don't need to have an ego because they're successful. They have the biggest egos of all. They have the most insecurities of all. They're wondering if people like them, if they deserve their position. So you have to be very careful. Your job is to make them look better, okay? So yes, you try hard. Yes, you do a good job. But in the end, you're trying to make it seem like they're the boss. They're the one who's got the power, not you. So you don't want to try too hard to impress in a way where you're going to threaten them. Now, if you're in another job, you're older, you're in your 20s, your late 20s, your 30s, and you have a boss, and they're incompetent, they're stupid, right? And that happens a lot. I've worked for people like that before. There comes a point where you might think it's wise to impress the other people in the company. It's a game, it's like a chess game, because the boss probably has other bosses and there are other people involved. And you may want to show that this person is incompetent, that you're better than they are, and that you deserve a higher position than what you have. But in general, I think it's much better and smarter to play it cool, to wait for the opportunities when they come, and to be patient. So a lot of young people, and I was guilty of this when I was young, are very impatient. They want to get to the top quickly. They want to start making a lot of money. And the goal here is not to get a raise right away, to make a lot of money, to get promoted. The job is to learn skills, to observe how people are, to observe the power game, and to master it early and slowly by observing what's going on around you and not being in a hurry to impress people.
Now, some people are truly toxic, and we've all encountered them in our life. They're no good. They can ruin your life. They're aggressive, they're selfish, whatever it is. And my book is full of stories of those types. Now, when you're with them, you need to be able to suss them out. You need to be able to see the signs that you're dealing with a toxic person. So I'm telling you to be aware in the moment that every person you deal with in life is different as an individual. You, Patrick, have a background that's unique, right? You've explained some of that to me. The more I know about your unique background, about what makes you who you are, the better I'm able to deal with you. It doesn't mean I have to become a fake person with Patrick. It just means that when I know that you have these particular sensitivities and these particular values, I have to be aware of that, and I have to not offend you, or do things that are going to turn you against me. So it's not like you have to make everybody like you, but you have to understand every person that you deal with and what makes them tick, what makes them an individual. Sometimes you do have to alter yourself and how you talk to a person depending on who they are. And you're not bipolar. This is where the argument gets sidelined and is not right. When you are in your daily life and you meet Jordan Peterson, for instance, you talk to him a certain way, and when you meet somebody else who maybe you don't respect as much, you suddenly become another person. I'm saying you're not aware of how deeply you are acting in your everyday
I agree with
interactions.
Well, not all of them do, but a lot of very good seducers do, because it's a very natural quality. So children are by nature very seductive because they're not trying to put on a front. They just are who they are, right? And they're very fresh, and they say what they think, and they have weird fantasies, and they're charming, and we're charmed by them, right? And so when a person retains that quality, retains that openness, retains that kind of spontaneity, retains that kind of unpretentiousness, we're charmed as well, and we can be seduced by them. And one of the types, in the book I have 9 types of seducers, and I'm trying to tell you, the reader, that you are at least one of these types, maybe 2, but usually there's one that stands out. And one of the types is the natural, which is the person who's retained their childlike qualities.
This makes sense.
But in all of them, if the seducer seems too calculating, too cold, too in control, too trying to dominate and get sex or get a favor out of it, it's sometimes easy to see through, and it's not very seductive. But we don't think of children as being seducers. We just think of them being themselves. But actually, children are trying to seduce. They actually are trying to get your attention. They are trying to get your love. But if you make it seem like you're just a natural, like you're just naturally who you are, then people won't realize that you're seducing them. You can get away with a lot.
So as I said, we're increasingly self-absorbed. We're always thinking about ourselves. Do people like me? Did I say the right thing? Am I being respected? And I want to flip the scenario. I want you to look and think about the other person, what they need, what they're thinking, their psychology, their background, their problems. And starting from that position, you have the ability to influence them. And that may lead into some of this acting ability where you know how to present the proper front for them, etc. I know I get a lot of flack for this in my books, and I've had it since the 48 Laws of Power and the Art of Seduction. But I'm saying to be a social animal and to be able to get along with people, of course, sometimes you need to be honest. I don't think you should be dishonest with your wife and your children. Those are personal situations. I'm talking out in the business world. I'm sure when you're addressing your thousands of employees I've been to that in Vegas, you're playing a role. You're wearing a mask. You're showing them a kind of persona that's going to impress them. You're being a leader. Being a leader means being assertive, being strong, talking in a certain tone of voice, carrying yourself in a certain way. You're an actor. And the better you are in front of a crowd in doing that, the more people will think of you as a person of authority. Well, first of all, you have to understand that that's what you're experiencing. People will disguise their envy. They will criticize you. They will say, "Oh, Patrick, you cheated your way to the top," or "You did this out of the other. You got to where you are out of some unfair means," or "You don't really deserve your success." And you won't recognize that as envy. They may be more subtle with their criticisms. You'll think that they're just being critical of you, that they're trying to be honest. But in fact, they're feeling deep amount of envy. So the problem is recognizing when envy is occurring. Oftentimes you don't recognize that that's what's going on. You think that the people just don't like you or are criticizing you, as opposed to the fact that they are envious of your success. So half the game is to recognize that people are feeling this emotion and to not get dragged down onto their level.
Where they get, immediately, that's what their life is going to be like, and they're 22, 23, and all the joy, all the excitement, all the fun, all the adventure, all the uncertainty is gone. I know it's different now for young people than when I was young. It's a lot harder. It's harder to get a good job. Jobs aren't so available. Things are much more uncertain now than they were in my day. It's hard to hold on to something for very long. The industries are constantly being churned up, and you never know where you are. So there's more insecurity than when I was a young person. So I understand that, and I'm empathetic. So I can understand why you would want security when you're in your 20s in this day and age, as opposed to when I was. I didn't want security. I wanted fun and adventure and weirdness. But I think you have to have some adventure, because it sounds like a total cliche, but your youth passes really quickly. You don't realize it. You think you've got all these vistas of time, and then it's gone. And it's the best time of your life. You've got all this energy. Your mind is fluid. It's open. You're excited about people. You're following trends. You've got to be a little more open to having experiences, to even having failure, to even being hurt, to just living life and to be alive and not be so worried and fearful. That's what I think is what I tell people. But then I was wanting to be a writer, and to be a writer is a whole totally different thing, where you do want to accumulate experiences. You do want 50 different jobs. You do want to meet all sorts of different people and travel. That's not a blueprint for a lot of people out there. But having an adventure, having a spirit of adventure, and trying different things while also being practical. So I want to go into business. All right, maybe in 3 years I will join that firm. But in the meantime, maybe I'll try a startup. Maybe I'll create my own business. Maybe I'll start a podcast. Maybe I'll do something different and not be in such a hurry. And then I'll learn something. And then maybe it'll be time to go to business school and follow that more traditional path.
Okay, so I have a definition of narcissism that's a little different from other people's. Normally we think of a narcissist as someone who loves themselves. And I'm actually saying that a narcissist is a person who doesn't love themselves sufficiently. So in order to get through life, we have to have a degree of self-esteem. We have to think that we're worthy of certain things. We have to have a sense of inner worth. If we don't have that kind of bedrock from within, we constantly need attention and validation from other people, right? I need attention, I need to stir trouble, I need to feed my ego. I can't get it from myself, I have to get it from other people. That's a classic, what I call a deep narcissist. And that's why they cause so many problems in life. And I measure it. I say, imagine it like a water line. And here at the top is someone who's not a narcissist. Here at the middle is kind of an average person. And as you sink deeper into narcissism, you're more and more self-absorbed. You can never get up to that mid-level point where you can start thinking about other people. At the high point, you're someone who's very empathetic. You're able to get inside the mind of other people. You understand their moods, their emotions. Most of us fall at that range of maybe 60%, 50 being the middle line. We have moments of narcissism where we get self-absorbed, particularly if we have problems, and we turn inward. But then we have enough self-esteem because of our parents and because of our background that we raise ourselves back up, and we don't keep continually sinking into that narcissism. We want to get higher. We want to get to that level where we're able to be more empathetic. A deep narcissist has sunk so far below that they can never get up to even to that halfway point. They're so self-absorbed. They're so insecure. They constantly must stir up trouble. They need to be the center of attention. If to be the center of attention means to create a great work of art, that's fine. But sometimes to be the center of attention means to mess with people, to create problems, to stir up trouble, and to be at the center of that. Once somebody is at that level, like a 20 or a 30, these are just arbitrary numbers.
Sure.
There's nothing that's going to raise them back up. That's who they are. There's nothing they can do. There's almost nothing other people can do. They are what's the word? They're damaged goods.